Good morning, and blessings. Welcome to another session of Ask the Pastor Bible Study Live on YouTube and on Facebook and wherever live streams and broadcasts can be found on social media. I hope that you're doing well. I welcome you to an exciting session. A lot of wonderful things are going to be going on in this broadcast on this morning. Let me just make sure that my audio is working right. It should be working right. And I know you guys will tell me as soon as you come in. And the second thing is, let's start sharing. Let's start sharing this broadcast. All right. Helen White, good morning to you. Or good afternoon to you, because I know you are in Florida, so I know it's different time zones and all that. But happy Friday to everybody, and welcome to the watch party. We are continuing with our watch parties. This is going to be the Faith at the Field of Anathoth watch party, the Q&A part, because we finished the video part, the teaching part. So we are going to examine the Q&A of Tim Martin and the congregation that was at Todd Hall Retreat Center at the Eschatology of the Prophets conference. I am also going to be announcing breaking news about the 2027 conference. But before we get there, can you please help me to share this? Because obviously we want everybody that wants to be involved to have all the news and all the information that they can have. I'm actually right now sharing on WhatsApp. Gotta make sure I share at the Ask the Pastor, if anywhere. Yeah. All right. So please hit that share button. Tag at least 2, 3, or 200 people. Tag the groups that you're a part of, because we are going to be talking about some exciting news. Not only about the just concluded Eschatology of the Prophets conference, but we are also going to be talking about the upcoming Eschatology of the Psalms conference 2027. Yes, we are already looking forward to 2027. Don't never believe anyone that tells you that preterists don't have forward vision or future vision. We do believe in things in the future, and in 2027 we believe that God is going to be blessing us once again in a local conference here in the St. Louis region. We're going to be talking about that in a moment. Now, welcome John Bacco. Good to see you, Mr. Bacco. Good day to everyone here. Blessings to you all, the saints at the well. Speaking about the well, one of the ways that you can get in contact with us, apart from the information that is scrolling at the bottom of the screen in orange, the email, the phone number, the ways to give, you can go to our church website. In fact, more and more increasingly, everything will be on the church website. Sorry. And the way you get there, you go to www.thewellchurch.com. Let me show you how the website looks like. As soon as you open it up, that's how the website looks at www.thewellchurchstl.com. You will see here on this website that we have a few tabs at the very top, conferences. So we already have started putting up the slides from this conference that we just came from. So you can see all the slides from all the speakers going up. They're going up. They're going up. They're going up. Then also on the website, there is Ask the Pastor. Ask the Pastor is our YouTube channel where many of you are watching, but some of you are watching us from Facebook. So Ask the Pastor, you can already see that even what we are doing right now is listed here. I'm not going to click on it. And then, well, actually I could just click on it and you'll see that it's going to show me telling you about us. All right. You should not be able to hear that, but that's what we did the other day. Let me do that. So anyway, so this is the watch party for the Q&A. And then, of course, on our church website, you can go back here and we have Women of Honor. Women of Honor is our ministry run by the women's ministry, in which not only do they fellowship and worship God together, prayer breakfast and all that locally, but globally, this is our missions ministry. This women's ministry, they have orphans in Africa right now. We are hoping that in the due course of time, we will be taking care of orphans all over the world. But right now, you can go there today and you can actually begin supporting an actual orphan. And all the funds go directly to the orphan. We don't have any administrative or managerial fees. It just goes to help these orphans go to school, have a bed, have a home, and so on and so forth. So you can go to Women of Honor ministry, which is part of the church at the well. Then, of course, we have events. Right now, it should be blank because we have not yet even loaded what I'm talking about today. The 2027 conference is loading. And then, of course, we would like to encourage you to join us in the ministry of giving. Nothing is too little. Nothing will ever be too much. God loves a cheerful giver. You can become a regular giver here. You can do a one-time gifting, right? You see, it says general, benevolence, conference, media and teaching, missions, outreach, youth ministry, Women of Honor. You can do a one-time donation. You can do weekly donation, monthly donation, quarterly or annual donation, whatever you want to do. And that's me and my wife back when I was a little bit weighty, when I had more glory in the meat department. Anyway, so that's our church website. Now, for today, I want to get right into what we are doing today. We are going to be examining the Q&A session that followed Tim Martin's excellent, incomparable teaching at the Eschatology of the Prophets conference on Wednesday afternoon, July the 8th, which is about 2 weeks ago now, almost. Actually, it's 2 weeks ago. So we're going to be examining that here shortly, and we are going to see what went on there. And of course, you guys will be able to contribute to this Q&A that we are about to do. But let me announce right here and right now that we are going back to Todd Hall Retreat Center in 2027. It's going to be in the beginning of August. Right now, we are projecting, and don't hold me to this one yet. Don't take this to the bank yet, but we are projecting that it's going to be the very first week of August, the first weekend of August. It is going to be, once again, at the very least, a 3-night, 4-day conference. It might be longer, depending on the planning, but we believe it's going to be about the same from Wednesday to Saturday, possibly from Wednesday to Sunday. Okay, so we will look into that. From Wednesday, at the very least, to Saturday, but possibly Wednesday to Sunday. So it might end up being 4 nights and 5 days, because we might have more speakers. We might have more stuff that we want to do. But for right now, what you can begin to put on your calendar is that there is going to be a 2027 eschatology conference here in the St. Louis region. It is not going to be the eschatology of the prophets, but it is going to remain an EOP. Remember, we had eschatology of the prophets, EOP. We are going to have another EOP, but this time it is going to be the eschatology of the Psalms. So it's going to be an EOTP, eschatology of the Psalms. And we're going to have many speakers. We have not yet contacted any speaker yet, so that's why I cannot announce any part of that. But August, the first weekend of August 2027, Todd Hall Retreat Center. Those who are there this year know how amazing and excellent that place is and that conference was, and so we want to do it again. Of course, we are going to move on in our theme into what do the Psalms teach about the end times? What do the Psalms teach about eschatology? What do the Psalms teach about the things at the end of the redemptive plan of God? So that's what we are going to be doing. Now, I have my friend here who I want to greet. His name is Christea Girigani, all the way from India. All the way from India right now. We greet you, Christea. Christea is actually the father of one of our very good friends here in St. Louis, who was actually, who comes to our church and also attended the conference. Brother Vine, that's his dad. And of course, Vine is just such an excellent young man. And we know that the fruit does not fall very far from the tree. So, guys, please prepare. Put on your calendar the first weekend of August. Can you go and block that out? We are going to be back in St. Louis for more and better than what we just had here. I can tell you this just in tentative, that we are going to be contacting many of the speakers that were there this year, and we are going to be asking them to come back so that we can have a continuity and a consistency of what is going on. Of course, there will be new speakers. I cannot promise that all the speakers that were there this year will be back, but I can promise that we will have an excellent time just like we had this year by the grace of the Lord. So if you have any questions about that, I would suggest that you wait a couple weeks until we have put together the plan, until we have put it up in the event section, but you can begin planning, because some people have already started writing me and saying, when is the next conference? Where is it going to be held? Where can I register? We are going to have all that by the fall. By the end of the fall, we will have all that together. So in other words, by sometime in October, November, maybe December, we will have the registration information already put up so that people can begin to book their places in the conference for next year. All right. So very good. Now, let's get to our watch party. So now, if you want to watch the Eschatology of the Prophets conference, the whole conference, you go to our YouTube channel, which is Ask the Pastor Bible 3D. Ask the Pastor Bible 3D. In fact, let me go ahead and just open that up. If you go to our YouTube channel, it looks like that. Ask the Pastor Bible 3D. Once you go there, if you go to the tabs where there's home, video, shorts, live, podcast, you want to go to the tab that says playlists. Playlists. And once you go to the tab that says playlists, then you will receive all these playlists. And some of these, of course, are made by my children, so don't worry about them. But we have these playlists that we've been doing the last week or so. The post-conference analysis. This is where you find all this commentary. Then you have the playlist for the conference itself. Okay. And you want to hit view full playlist. We have 25 videos of the 25 sessions that we did at the Eschatology Conference. That's including the praise and worship. We have the faith at the field of Anathoth by Tim Martin. So they are listed in the order in which they occurred. So today we are going to be examining the Q&A session that followed the teaching by Tim Martin, the faith at the field of Anathoth, Q&A by Tim Martin. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And I am going to enlarge that. And pretty soon, in a moment, I'm going to put up the sound so that you guys can hear what is going on, what questions were asked of Tim. We want you to hear the questions, how he answered them. And we also want you to ask your own questions if you have questions. If I cannot answer the questions, I will be relaying those questions to Tim Martin. In about maybe 2 weeks, we are planning to have a joint live broadcast of all the speakers, the 6 speakers that were at the Eschatology Conference. We're going to have them all on the same screen. It may be that we're actually going to do it on a Zoom, but that is going to be broadcast live so that you all can come in and interact with the speakers from the Eschatology Conference, ask them questions that you had that we were not able to get to, because of course we were constrained for time. We had to go and eat. And whenever it came time to eat, we had to cut off everything because that food over there was amazing. 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 All right. So John Bacco says it should take us this whole next year to chew on all the last conference messages again. Indeed. And by the way, we have been having these conferences since 2023. The first conference that we ever held here in St. Louis from a fulfilled perspective was in August of 2023. And then we did one in 2024. We did one in 2025 in Montana. So we did the first two were in St. Louis. The third one was in Montana. The fourth one was at the Todd Hall Retreat Center in Illinois, which is just across the river. And then 2027, the fifth one, is going to also be at Todd Hall Retreat. If everything works out the way we are believing. All right. Philip Brady is also here. My friend says definitely a lot to marinate on. Indeed, indeed, indeed. So now, let's get into it. Let's listen. Now, this session only took 21 minutes. The questions for Tim Martin after his the faith at the field of Anathoth presentation, the Q&A only took 21 minutes. So we will listen to these questions and then we will discuss what took place. All right. So here we go. I am going to mute myself. I'm going to put Tim Martin on as he begins to be asked questions, and let's see what we may glean from these questions. If you have not already watched the teaching itself, please go to the playlist. If you have not watched our review of the teaching, go to the playlist. All these playlists are in the description section of this particular live session. So if you're watching it even later, if you go to the description section, you will see the playlist for the conference. You will also see the playlist for the watch parties, the commentaries that I'm making, and the commentaries that people are making as we examine these things. So let's go right away to Tim Martin in the Q&A, and let's hear what happened at the Q&A session.
Ready, Tim?
Go for it.
I've been told not to let you off easy.
I look forward to it.
No, I have to say, Tim, that was truly excellent. I appreciate it from the first to the very last. I've still got some questions about it, but I think it was about the most convincing that I've heard you present. So I just wanted you to know that. I do have a question. One little caveat, if you please, not to be adversarial at all, but just to dig a little bit deeper. A couple of different times you mentioned how God referred to Israel in Egypt as my people. Would it not be possible to see that as proleptic in light of Deuteronomy 27, 9 and 10, into which God at Horeb said of Israel receiving Torah, this day you have become a nation unto me. So that seems to be at odds, at least in some respect, to what you were saying there. So I'd appreciate some clarification on that.
I'm going to address this specific question in a coming presentation this week.
Okay.
But I think you would agree that that situation at Horeb and Sinai is a marriage. Would you agree that that is when God took Israel as his own wife? So the way I view that is it's a wedding context of a full-grown wife. If you go to Ezekiel 16 tells the story of Jerusalem. It doesn't start the story with a full-grown wife. It starts with a baby, one that God discovers outcast in the field, kicking around
outcast in the wilderness.
Yes, and the story of Jerusalem goes, and the story of Ezekiel 16 is that God tells the baby to live. I see associations to Adam with that. Ezekiel 16 starts off the idea that your father is a Hittite and your mother is a Canaanite, which is associated to the promised land, which I associate as possibly with the Garden of Eden. Even if it's Abraham, still accomplishes the point. The story of Israel does not begin with a full-grown. So my point is the confusion here is there's an association of a wedding day that is one day, but there's a birthday that predates that.
So what I hear you saying is that the references to you, my people, in Egypt, in the betrothal situation, which God was, quote, finding Israel. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that for just a sec?
So what I'm hearing you say, and I'm looking for clarification, in light of the pretty definitive statement of Deuteronomy 27 and 10, this day you become a people, that all previous references, and I agree that Sinai is the way, I'm certainly on the same page there. So the previous references to Israel, Egypt has to be the betrothal.
I'm not sure that I would say a betrothal. I think it was with Moses coming on the scene, you have the initiation of that entire marriage context. My argument is Ezekiel 16 begins the story with a baby. I would not consider Israel as being born in Egypt. So as we see Ezekiel 16, it goes and talks about the history of the kings and Solomon's breaking of covenant and this tearing of Israel into half. It's laying out a historical allegory. And we have to respect that time period because it says specifically in, I believe it's verse 8 of Ezekiel 16, that Israel grew up and her breasts matured and it was time for love.
Right.
So my argument is we do not consider a bride being born on her wedding day. The wedding and the birthday are getting conflated. And particularly because of the Isaiah 51 issue, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But a wedding day is not a birthday. There has to be a birthday that predates the wedding day.
Okay.
We don't even have that in our experience. It would be very strange to think of a woman coming into existence on her wedding day. Ezekiel 16 is very clear. There is a history of Jerusalem from their birth. That's when the history of Jerusalem goes back.
I'll hand the mic to.
Yeah, sure.
I think William wanted to.
All right. So that was the beginning of the Q&A, and it began on the highest note possible. Because when Tim Martin had completed his presentation called The Faith at the Field of Anathoth, which you can find the information of the playlist in the description section. When we started the Q&A, the first person to pick up the mic to ask a question to Tim Martin was none other than the great Dr. Don K. Preston, who was also one of our keynote speakers in that particular conference. And we are so honored. I mean, this man is just loaded. He's wonderful. He's easy to relate with. We just appreciate that we had Don Preston there and we had Tim Martin there, and that the first question was presented by Dr. Preston. Now, let's consider what Dr. Preston asks Tim Martin. Okay, I'm just going to remind you. I'm not going to replay it over and over again. Now, when Dr. Preston stood up, he said, I want to ask you a question, Tim Martin. And first of all, before I ask you the question, this is what Don Preston said, and I want you to note it very carefully. Don Preston said, that was an excellent presentation, and that is probably the most convincing I have heard you teach ever. And notice, by the way, you guys need to know the history. Don Preston and Tim Martin have been knowing each other for over 20 years, I think. Right? They've been in conferences together. They have heard each other teach. So that was very high praise coming from Don Preston for Tim Martin. He says, that's the most convincing that I've heard you teach. Nevertheless, that does not mean that Don Preston agreed with everything that Tim Martin was presenting, which is okay and natural. Okay? So he says the question that he had was, because during the conversation or during the teaching, Tim Martin had taught that Israel was God's people before Mount Sinai, and that at Mount Sinai, God's people became God's new wife. So the marriage took place at Mount Sinai. Right? And of course, Tim Martin has taught this even last year in Montana and the year before in St. Louis, that the story of Israel does not begin at Mount Sinai. That's the wedding. The wedding is at Mount Sinai. So anyway, Don Preston countered and said, would it not then be correct to say that what is happening is proleptic, and we will define that in a moment. That God is calling Israel his people proleptically. In other words, they are not yet his people, but he is doing so using a device called prolepsis. Now, let me bring up on the screen what prolepsis means, and I just pulled it up on Google, and this is the question that I asked Google. Okay, I want you guys to see. I asked Google, what is prolepsis in literature? Because when you are in these conferences, you hear things, and sometimes these things are not necessarily things that you are familiar with. And so that's why we are doing these watch parties. That's why we are doing these sessions where we break down what was said. So what is prolepsis? What did Don Preston mean when he says, could it not be that God is calling Israel my people using prolepsis? Right? Now, prolepsis is a literary and rhetorical device where a future event is narrated or referenced before it chronologically happens in the story. It acts as a flash forward to create suspense, foreshadow an outcome, or provide the reader with contextual foresight. That is what prolepsis is. In other words, God intends to make Israel his people. So he calls Israel his people during the narration of what is about to happen, as if it has already happened. So in other words, it's kind of an already but not yet situation. So Don Preston asked Tim Martin, could it not be that God is speaking proleptically? So in other words, the people of Israel are not yet his people, but he foreshadows it by saying, my people Israel. And so I know that, and I hope that Mike Sullivan will watch this. When Mike Sullivan watched that question from Don Preston, Mike Sullivan commented, and Mike Sullivan is one of the leaders in the full preterist community. That question completely dismantled everything that Tim Martin had just taught for about an hour. Now, it is going to be up to you, the viewer, to see if you agree with Mike Sullivan. I'm not sure that that's what Don Preston was trying to do. And I actually haven't asked Don Preston. I don't think Don Preston was trying to dismantle what Tim Martin had taught. Rather, what I hear from Don Preston is that he wanted to understand, and he wanted to provide another perspective of why is God calling the children of Israel my people before Mount Sinai. And Don Preston, of course, brings up Deuteronomy 27, in which God will call, and actually I'm going to bring that up also here in a moment. So I hope that you guys understand what prolepsis is. But let's also put up the, hold on, where is this? All right, let me put up the Bible here, because I wanna put up what Don Preston is referring to, because I want to give fair hearing to everyone. So in Deuteronomy 27, I believe it's verse number 10, this is what God does. And remember, Deuteronomy is Moses' fifth writing, right? And in verse number 10, you see here, let's just begin. I wonder if I will remember where God calls them my people. I thought it was verse 10. Now, I cannot see where the verse is, but I will ask Don Preston. But anyway, he said that in Deuteronomy 27, God does call Israel his people before they get to Mount Sinai, meaning that they were going to become his people when they got to Mount Sinai. That was Don Preston's question. So this is how Tim Martin replied. Tim Martin said he doesn't see it as prolepsis because of two reasons. Number one, when you go to Ezekiel chapter 16, Ezekiel recounts the story of Israel, and he shows that the story of Israel begins when Israel was a baby. And that this baby grows up through a process up to where she's mature enough to become the wife of God. But she doesn't begin to become the wife of God or the particular people of God at the marriage ceremony. Rather, she was the people of God from when she was a baby. So this was Tim Martin's, my simple, representation of Tim Martin's answer is that Israel's story does not begin at Mount Sinai. In fact, what he said is that when a woman is married, even in our culture, that's not when she begins to exist. She already exists and has her identity as the person that is going to be married much later in her lifetime. She already has that identity. In other words, God did not marry an infant at Mount Sinai. God married a fully grown, mature woman, which means that Israel already existed as God's covenant people before the marriage covenant was instituted. So notice that at Mount Sinai, it is the marriage covenant that is instituted. But Israel was already in God's covenant. Because, and now here is me giving clarity, God had already entered into a covenant with Abraham. And within the covenant with Abraham in Genesis chapter 12, God had said, Abraham, I am going to make you into a great nation. And this is my covenant with you. So he gives a covenant, he gives the land promises, he gives the seed promises in Genesis 12. This covenant is renewed or passed on to Isaac. God confirms the covenant with Isaac that was given to Abraham. Then when Jacob is running away from his brother, God confirms the covenant with Jacob, right? At Bethel. Remember when he's lying on a stone and all that, he sees the whole ladder thing. So God has a covenant with Jacob that is stated. Jacob, when he's coming back from Laban's place, about 14, 15 years later, he meets with God, wrestles with God, and his name is changed to Israel. Is Israel already in covenant with God? Is Israel a particular, unique servant of God? Is he God's people, Israel? And now his wives? Yes. So therefore, it is illogical to say that Israel began to become God's people at Mount Sinai. Rather, Israel's relationship with God is brought into consummation, fullness at Mount Sinai. So Tim Martin actually gives Ezekiel 16 as his particular evidence that Israel already existed. And I want to show you that because he didn't have an opportunity to do that this year. Ezekiel chapter number 16. I'm going to put it up on the screen here in a moment. And you tell me what you think about it. So this is what it says. The Lord's faithless pride, the Lord's faithless bride is what this particular text is called. Again, the word of the Lord came to me, the me here being Ezekiel. Son of man, make known to Jerusalem her abominations. And say, thus says the Lord God to Jerusalem, your origin and your birth. Your origin and your birth. Notice how it starts. Your origin and your birth. So, is it possible, after the reading of this, for you to say the origin of Israel is at Mount Sinai? Now watch what he will say. Your origin and your birth are of the land of the Canaanites. Your father was an Amorite and your mother a Hittite. As for your birth, on the day you were born, your cord was not cut, nor were you washed with water to cleanse you, nor rubbed with salt, nor wrapped in swaddling cloths. Nor I pitied you to do any of these things to you out of compassion for you, but you were cast out on the open field, for you were abhorred on the day you were born. Now watch what happens next. And when I passed by you and saw you wallowing in your blood, I say to you, in your blood, live. Does that sound familiar? That should sound familiar because that's Genesis chapter 2. God breathed into the nostrils of Adam and Adam became a living soul, a living being. So he's being given special life. I said to you in your blood, live. God says about Jerusalem, I made you flourish like a plant of the field. So has God taken Israel and began to own Israel, to possess Israel, to make Israel his people? Yes. At least to me, that's what I see. That's what God is saying. Then he says, I made you flourish as a plant in the field. You grew up and you became tall and you arrived at full adornment. Your breasts were formed and your hair had grown. So puberty. Yet you were naked and bare. Again, this should give you a clear echo of Genesis 2. They were naked and they were not ashamed. So in 2024, Tim Martin presented this and said Ezekiel 16 is giving the history of Israel back to its origin, and its origin is in Adam. And so he he proposed that the birth of Israel from Canaanites and Amorites goes all the way back to, at the very least, Adam. Then he says, the text, when I passed by you again, and I saw you, behold, you are at an age for love. I spread the corner of my garment over you, and I covered your nakedness. I made my vow to you and entered into a covenant with you, declares the Lord God, and you became mine. Now, how is she becoming his? In what sense is she becoming his? Is this the first time she's becoming his people? No. Because later on in Hosea, he says, out of Israel, I called my son. He was already God's child. But now she has grown up and now she becomes his wife. And so Tim Martin's contention and answer to the question that Don Preston asked was that we should not conflate the origin and the birth of Israel with her wedding. So yes, there was a marriage covenant at Mount Sinai. No question about it. No question about it. Now, Mike Sullivan is here, and I'm glad that he's here again, because he makes, and so that you can see that I was not, I was not making an allegation about him. Mike Sullivan's, and I want those of you who are in the comment section to, let's actually debate this. Mike Sullivan says this: the question destroyed covenant creationism, and Tim Martin's very long answer was bizarre, to say the least. This is live right now. Mike Sullivan is writing this. The birth is with Abraham. Okay? And many times Tim Martin has said he can accept that. So I don't know why that is accepted. Number two, growth is in Egypt, Isaiah 51. And then God marries. Tim agrees here with us. Of course he does. And creates old covenant Israel at Sinai. But Tim's system has to disagree with us here. But then, number four, in Revelation, God divorces old covenant Israel, and thus her heavens and earth pass away, Revelation 21:1. And thus, this has nothing to do with the heavens. It's a very long statement. So guys, I'm going to read the rest of it from my phone. With the heavens and the earth of Genesis 1:1. My brother says, once one cannot separate the creation of the heavens and the earth from the marriage, and that is exactly what the covenant creation system is forced to do. Tim's answer literally makes no sense, because even he separates the birth from the marriage, which he sees is taking place. So what Tim is talking about here, no one knows. For a more exegeted and very clear answer to this question, see my articles here, and he gives the link there. Now, let me ask this. For those of you who are watching, do you agree with Mike Sullivan? And Mike Sullivan is an excellent full preterist teacher who I truly love and honor. I've met him in, I think, Mike Sullivan, I met you last year at Virginia. I have your book, Moses to Messiah, although I ended up giving that book away to my friends in Africa because full preterism is really picking up steam in Africa. And I think that your book is excellent. And I think that your work is excellent. Now, let me say this as I wait to hear what others will say in the comments section. I would like to ask you, Mike Sullivan, with all due respect, to maybe, if it is possible, if you are able to bring the temperatures down. We are not enemies. Tim Martin is not your enemy, and you are not his enemy. I don't think that the direction that you have taken this is mature or called for. But that's my opinion. I'm much younger than you. I'm much newer in this than you. But I think, even with my limited experience within full preterism, that I hope that I can present a pastoral view that is valid, because I've been a pastor since 2008. I don't think that the direction that you have taken this is good for anyone. Not for yourself, not for full preterism, not for the body of Christ. So I would say, why not go with what the Bible says? A gentle word is actually easier to be listened to than just a full-blown attack on a person's character. Words like this dismantles this destroys this. Those of us who are there, including myself and including others who do not agree with Tim Martin, nobody felt that Don Preston came and dismantled everything that Tim Martin had just taught. In fact, Don Preston himself said, this is an excellent presentation. This is the most convincing he has ever heard Tim Martin teach. You yourself, you need to review, Mike Sullivan, your own video with Don Preston the next, I think, after the conference, and you could see how uncomfortable he was by the way that you are approaching it, because you're quite abrasive, brother, and you're quite offensive in that way. I don't know that you feel that it's effective, but you could tell Don Preston is not wanting to go that direction. That's my observation. So I feel that even now, it is better to come and say, well, here is where I think this is not working. Here is where I think this works. Because because you said Tim Martin and his system is totally invalid, no one thinks that. Even you yourself don't think that. I don't believe you think that. Now, you may disagree with certain things, and that's all right. There are certain things I disagree with you. But the value that you bring to the table, brother, is irreversible and incomparable. It's awesome. It's wonderful. But if I start to attack you personally and to say that everything that you are doing is useless, I will be doing myself a disservice. And so I think you are doing yourself a disservice, with all due respect with us. And I respect you, and I will never stop respecting you. I will never stop loving you. Because you are still learning. You have already admitted you yourself have not studied Genesis well. You yourself are not an expert in covenant creationism. So then how can you say that covenant creationism is invalid when you have admitted you have not spent time enough? In fact, that's why you are not willing to debate Genesis, because that's not your forte. Then how can you come and say that the person who actually has studied Genesis is invalid? Just a request. Just with all due respect, right? And thank you for being here. I really, really do respect you. We are all still learning. And I believe that one of the things that I really began to respect Jeff and Tim for is how, even when I would approach them at first, when I first knew them, they say, listen, we have not yet, even in the book, BCS, it says, and I think I have a copy of it here. They say, we have not come to the end of saying now we have developed a fully blown system that cannot be re-examined. Oh no, it was just an opening of doors. And that has been at least what I've observed of Tim Martin. There are certain things that I've even seen him change his perspective towards since I got to know him. As he studied others, as he listened to others. So I appeal to you in the same way. And I hope that this has not come out in any way, in any derogatory way. I hope that I am doing this in the Spirit of the Lord and in the Spirit of grace and in just kindness. As Revival Ignite Ministries, who was there at the conference, says, we are still learning. Now, this is another pastor. He's from Alabama. Maybe Revival Ignite Ministries, as a pastor, when Tim Martin presented his first presentation, And when Don Preston asked his first question, what did you characterize that interaction as? Did you feel that what Tim Martin presented was just totally crazy and weird? And did you feel that Don Preston came and showed, yeah, that was just so useless? I didn't feel so, but you guys can tell me. The comments that I've seen from people, the feedback we are getting from people, I've not had anyone except you, Mike Sullivan, except you. I've not had anyone come back with that view. And I'm not saying that just because it's only you who is saying that it's not a valid view. I'm just saying there are other people and they have a positive, outlook to what Tim Martin presented. Now, of course, I'm biased because Tim Martin is my partner in ministry. I'm very close to him. He's my personal friend. We do the work together. So obviously, I would not sit there and not defend what I believe to be true. So, what did Tim Martin say to Don Preston? He said, Don Preston, first of all, I agree with you that there may be prolepsis. So even Tim Martin doesn't come and say, oh, no, there cannot be prolepsis. Yes, but at the very same time, he says, I don't believe we need to conflate the wedding with the birth. Would you say, Mike Sullivan, that Israel was born at Mount Sinai? That Israel began to exist at Mount Sinai? I doubt that you would say that. Are Israel characterized? Now this is just between you and me. Exegetical. Are Israel characterized as heaven and earth? In Moses, Deuteronomy 31 and 32. Yes. Are Israel also characterized as the sun and the moon and the stars, the luminaries that are placed in the heavens? The answer to that would be yes. I would believe that you know that Genesis 37 identifies Jacob as the sun, Rachel as the moon, and the 12 sons of Jacob as the stars. Genesis 37. Right? But this is long before Mount Sinai. So how is it that Jacob and his wife and his sons are the sun and the moon and the stars, luminaries that we know are placed in the heavens? How are they existing as the sun, moon, and stars if the heavens and the earth will not begin existing until at least 100 years later, maybe 200 years later actually, 215 years later to be exact? How is it that the sun, moon, and stars can exist before the heavens and the earth? Even in Genesis, does the sun, moon, and stars come before the heavens, or do the heavens precede the sun, moon, and stars? I have posed that question to you before. I've not yet had an answer from you. Now, John Payne says this: I'm very sorry to witness Mike acting this way. It's unchristlike, as they play the ball, not the man. As they say, play the ball, not the man. So I hope that you will hear that, Mike Sullivan, that it's really not doing the whole movement any favors when you deal with it this way. You should disagree. You must disagree where you must disagree. It's okay. Just in the same way when we disagree with Joel Richardson, which you do, or Tommy Ice, or John Hagee, how do we disagree with them? Do we go after them personally? Do we begin to derogate their character, their personality, their marriages, their anything about them personally? Or do we deal with the argument and exegetically show why they are wrong? How do we deal with it? So Mike Sullivan says, Steve, no one understands what Tim was saying, and you are correct that you are biased. Well, am I no one? Because I clearly understood it. I understood it. Is there anyone else who was at the conference? Revival Ignite Ministries, did you understand what Tim Martin was saying? Because I've heard many people say they understood what Tim Martin was saying. Don Preston said he understood what Tim Martin was saying at the conference. Was Don Preston lying? He's your friend. Are you willing to say Don Preston was just pretending to understand? Because let me play it again. Let's see what Don Preston says about Tim Martin's presentation. Then I'll come back to your statement, Brother Mike. Because I don't know that you're hearing people. People are talking and they're saying, Mike, Come on, you are a great man. You do great things. Live up to the level that you're at. Don't go low, man. Stay high. That's all we are saying. We're not saying don't disagree. Now, let's see what the exchange was.
No, I have to say, Tim, that was truly excellent. I appreciate it from the first to the very last. I've still got some questions about it, but I think it was about the most convincing that I've heard you present. So I just wanted you to know that. I do have.
So that's how Don Preston begins. That's how Don Preston. He says, Tim Martin, I want to commend you. This is the most excellent. This is the clearest I've heard you teach. We are dealing with this statement, Mike. You said no one understood what Tim was saying. And you are correct, you are biased. Now, apart from me, is there anyone else who understood what Tim was saying? Can you be honest, Mike Sullivan? In these debates that you've had since the conference, are there other people that were not even at the conference that have come at you and told you, we understood what Tim Martin was saying? Can you be honest in this moment? Can you be honest in just honesty? Was there anyone else apart from Steve Magua who understood what Tim Martin was saying? And before God, you know that many people understood what Tim Martin was saying. Now, if you did not understand what Tim Martin was saying, that's fair enough. It's okay. It's okay. Sometimes we misunderstand each other. Sometimes we just don't understand what the person is talking about that. Now, it says, therefore, can you give us an interpretation of Tim's answer here, since no one understands what he's saying? We have never said Israel was both born and created as a heavens and earth at Sinai. That's just a lie, brother. Tim doesn't even believe Israel was born and created at the same time. No, he doesn't. So, brother Mike, don't you believe that the heavens and the earth of Israel were created at Mount Sinai? Isn't that what you believe? That's what you believe, that the heavens and the earth of Israel began, the genesis of Israel is at Mount Sinai. Because the genesis of the Bible begins with the creation of heaven and earth. Don't you believe that? Isn't that what you're teaching? I could have misunderstood you. And if I've misunderstood you, first of all, even ahead of time, apologies. Because I can easily misunderstand you. English is not even my first language. But I can easily misunderstand you. So, now, and then Pastor John says, I understand, but I'm still studying to know where I stand. Then he says, I don't, did not sound like that, but let us know there are still questions to be answered. Yes. Don did not sound like he was saying like that. That's what he's saying. But there are still questions to be answered. And that is a fair assessment. That is a fair assessment. So you say Israel is born with Abraham and Sarah. Praise God. That's exactly what Tim Martin is saying. At least he said clearly, I am willing to accept, and he has put it in print, I'm willing to accept that Ezekiel 16 is pointing to Abraham and Sarah. He proposes that it goes all the way back to Genesis with Adam, but he's willing to accept at the very least that the heavens and the earth of Israel do go far back. They don't start at Mount Sinai. That's all he's proposing. And as far as I've heard Tim Martin and I've been around him, he has not said that if anyone does not believe this, is not a full preterist. I've never heard him say that. He just says this is what I believe is a consistent approach. And I think that even you yourself, when you're talking to futurists, you say, Mike, this is a consistent approach to eschatology. It doesn't mean that you're saying that if somebody does not believe what you believe, they're not a Christian. That futurists, you don't say that, do you? But yet you press your case, as you ought. So you say, but Tim is also saying God married her at Sinai. Yes. So what is his criticism of us? I don't know what his criticism of you is, because I've not heard his criticism of you, Mike. I've heard your criticism of him. I've heard your derogatory words of him. I've seen you really insult him. I've heard you demanding a public apology. So I think that the case of criticism and a burden of proof, I think it lies with you. I think it lies with you. I think you are the one making accusations and allegations. I think that you're the one that is coming off with battle gear and going to an attack, with all due respect. But we are not here to discuss that. We are here to discuss the Q&A. So how about this, Mike Sullivan? You and Tim agreed that you are going to have a debate after both conferences, this one and the one that's coming up in Arkansas, which you and I will be at. So how about you and Tim hash that out? That way, this particular broadcast can be focused on what we came here to do. We came to listen to the Q&A. Your view, which has been registered, is that don't press on question, dismantle the whole presentation of Tim Martin. It has been registered. I don't agree. Many people don't agree. Nobody at the conference felt like that. I don't think that Don Preston agrees with you. I will ask him specifically, because we are going to have a live broadcast with Don Preston. I will ask him that question specifically. Don Preston, and you note it because you'll be there, you'll be watching. Don Preston, did you feel that your question entirely and totally dismantled the whole presentation of Tim Martin at the Eschatology of the Prophets conference? I will ask him that question. I will not preempt his answer. We will hear from Don Preston. Is that fair enough? So you say no one knows. We need an interpretation. That's good. That's okay. That's all right. So anyway, thank you very much, Mike Sullivan, for your views. Now let's continue here with examining what was said at the conference and the Q&A. So we have just examined what Don Preston asked and how Tim Martin answered the question, and what Tim Martin said about Israel being called God's people. Because Don Preston was suggesting that Israel was being called God's people proleptically. In other words, they were not yet God's people. I believe that it can be proven in many ways that Israel was God's covenant people long before Mount Sinai. But Israel was not God's covenant wife before Mount Sinai. That's what we believe in covenant creation. And Revival Ignite Ministry says it is okay to disagree. I think that's been an age-old agreement across not only Christianity, but across all disciplines. It's okay to disagree. We don't have to agree. We are not called to uniformity. We are called to unity. And of course, before we get to unity, we may have to hash out. We may have to have conferences and councils and debates. We can do that. It's okay to disagree, Mike. It's okay to disagree, even if we never agree. It's okay. But we don't need to be attacking one another. We don't need to go that low. We really don't. We really do not. It's not good for anyone. It does not help anyone. So what I would do, Mike, if I were you, even your article that you wrote on Isaiah 51, I would go and I would actually edit it so that anybody that comes into that article 10 years from now, 100 years from now, they will not first of all be hearing how you despise and dishonor Tim Martin. They will be hearing, this is what Isaiah 51 says. This is what Psalm 102 means. That's what people need to know. They don't need to know your personal feelings about Tim Martin. What they want to see in the scriptures, because remember, you have to think with vision, strategically. What are people going to be hearing when they read your articles 50 years from now? Because if somebody picks up your article and the first 10 paragraphs are a personal attack on the character of your opponent, first of all, a whole lot of people turn off. They just turn off. They're like, I don't need that. I came here to learn the word of God. I did not come here to settle personal differences. I think you can separate those two things. So anyway, let's continue. Vital Tube says, I read Sullivan's paper this morning. I can follow both sides. What's missing for me is the connection that Genesis 1 in covenant creation is the same as Zionist understanding of Genesis 1. Explain that to me, Steve. So in other words, and this is a question for Mike Sullivan. Mike Sullivan, how is it that covenant creation understanding of Genesis 1 is Zionist? How does that become Zionist? I cannot answer that question. Vital Tube, Mike Sullivan, because when I read, I know I'm not a Zionist at all. I think that is well known. I know Tim Martin is not a Zionist at all. He despises Zionism. I know Jeff Vaughn despises Zionism. In fact, I don't think that there is anyone in covenant creationism that leans towards Zionism in any way, shape, or form. Secondly, I don't believe that Mike Sullivan is Zionist in any way. At least I've watched you a lot, Mike Sullivan. You are not Zionist. You do not lean that way at all. So I don't think that your view nor Tim Martin's view leads to Zionism. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. So I ask, would you answer the gentleman? If you answer the gentleman why it is Zionist, I will put it up on the screen. Now let's continue here. Bill Atkinson says, thank you, Steve, for handling this matter so professionally and Christ-like. Vital Tube answers and says, Mike said Tim Martin aligns with the Zionist movement. I don't know why. I don't know how. I just wouldn't know how. Rod Moore says, if you are in Christ, you don't attack your brother in Christ. It should be reviewed by fellow members in the church, etc., etc., etc. So I hope that you are hearing what people are saying, Mike. I really do. Because I know sometimes we tune out what people are saying because we are so convinced that we are right. And I'm like that sometimes. And sometimes somebody has to come and tap me on the shoulder and say, brother, you are just murdering your own good work when you begin attacking people. I've been told that. And I like what Jack Scott said the other day. He said, I'm following all these discussions and I just want to caution all of you. Let's come out of the tribalism. Let's come out of the personal attacks. We are not helping ourselves. And preterism has been plagued with this kind of behavior. Let's admit it. This is normal behavior in preterism. What most futurists see in our forums is pettiness, childishness, tribalism, carnality, sensuality, hatred, ego, pride, including myself. And may the Lord help us to understand that we are actually shooting ourselves in the foot. We are actually shooting ourselves in the foot. We have great arguments. We have a great thing that has been given to us by God, but we are not handling it with the gravity that it has been given to us. And I believe that is why many men are never heard of after their generation, because they did not go high enough. They stayed at the ground level. They fought like cats. They disparaged other men. And the great work that they were doing is overshadowed by the carnality. May the Lord help me. May the Lord help you, Mike. May the Lord help Tim Martin. May the Lord help Don Preston. Because to whom much is given, much is required. The greatest among you is not the one that will be at the highest point, being seen as the Mark Daddy of them all. The greatest them of you will be the one that will be seen as the humblest, meekest, the one that serves at the lowest rung, the one that yields the most, the one that looks most like Christ. And I have to say, I'm biased, but that's what I see of Don Preston. That's what I see of Tim Martin. That's what I see of William Bell. That's what I see of Jack Scott. That's what I see of Mike Miano. And I hope to God that that's what is seen of me. And I'm just talking about the leading lights within preterism and covenant creationism and so on and so forth. I'm not saying any of these men are perfect, but that's just what I see. And that's just what I hope for. That's how I learn. So, Revival says we are grown-ups and we should be able to have open dialogue without all that. Kudos. Let's get back to Tim Martin and Don Preston here. So I'm going to go back to the video and I'm just going to play it from where it is, but I'm going to go now up to the question that was asked by William Bell. All right? So let's keep it moving.
have a question. One little caveat, if you please, not to be adversarial at all, but just to dig a little bit deeper. A couple of different times you mentioned how God referred to Israel in Egypt as my people. Would it not be possible to see that as proleptic in light of Deuteronomy 27, 9 and 10, into which God at Horeb said of Israel receiving Torah, this day you have become a nation unto me. So that seems to be at odds, at least in some respect, to what you were saying there. So I'd appreciate some clarification on that.
I'm going to address this specific question in a coming presentation this week.
Okay.
But I think you would agree that that situation at Horeb and Sinai is a marriage. Would you agree that
Yeah.
that is when God took Israel as his own wife? So the way I view that is as it's a wedding context of a full-grown wife. If you go to Ezekiel 16 tells a story of Jerusalem. It doesn't start the story with a full-grown wife. It starts with a baby, one that God discovers outcast in the field, kicking around in their
Outcast in
blood.
the wilderness.
Yes, and the story of Jerusalem goes, and the story of Ezekiel 16 is that God tells the baby to live. I see associations to Adam with that. Ezekiel 16 starts off the idea that your father is a Hittite and your mother is a Canaanite, which is associated to the promised land, which I associate as possibly with the Garden of Eden. Even if it's Abraham, still accomplishes the point. The story of Israel does not begin with a full-grown. So my point is the confusion here is there's an association of a wedding day that is one day, but there's a birthday that predates that.
So what I hear you saying is that the references to you, my people, in Egypt, in the betrothal situation, which God was, quote, finding Israel. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that for just a second?
So what I'm hearing you say, and I'm looking for clarification, in light of the pretty definitive statement of Deuteronomy 27 and 10, this day you become a people, that all previous references, and I agree that Sinai is the way, I was certainly on the same page there. So the previous references to Israel, Egypt has to be the betrothal.
I'm not sure that I would say betrothal. I think there was, with Moses coming on the scene, you have the initiation of that entire marriage context. My argument is Ezekiel 16 begins the story with a baby. I would not consider Israel as being born in Egypt. So as we see Ezekiel 16, it goes and talks about the history of the kings and Solomon's breaking of covenant and this tearing of Israel into half. It's laying out a historical allegory. And we have to respect that time period because it says specifically in, I believe it's verse 8 of Ezekiel 16, that Israel grew up and her breasts matured and it was time for love.
Right.
So my argument is we do not consider a bride being born on her wedding day. The wedding and the birthday are getting conflated. And particularly because of the Isaiah 51 issue, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But a wedding day is not a birthday. There has to be a birthday that predates the wedding day.
Okay.
We don't even have that in our experience. It would be very strange to think of a woman coming into existence on her wedding day. Ezekiel 16 is very clear. There is a history of Jerusalem from their birth. That's when the history of Jerusalem goes back.
I'll hand the mic to.
Yeah, sure.
I think William wanted to.
So that was the exchange between Don Preston and Tim Martin. And again, I will reiterate, it was a very, very, very good exchange. There was no animosity. There was no sense, I was in the room, there was no sense that Don Preston was trying to upstage Tim. I believe that Don Preston is seeking to fully understand Tim Martin's argument. And I believe that Tim Martin gave a very clear answer as to why he believes what he believes. I don't believe anyone who sat there and said, oh my goodness, Tim Martin is just lost and he doesn't know what he's talking about, and whatever words are coming out of his mouth are just mambo jumbo. I didn't feel like that. Do you guys feel like the answer you just had, if you are not at the conference, did you just feel, I'm asking two questions. Is Don Preston trying to dismantle Tim Martin's presentation, if you have already watched it? And is Tim Martin just hustling about not knowing how to answer the question? What are you getting? You tell me. Bill Atkinson says this: the disposition and humbleness, along with the razor-sharp exegesis of Don Preston and William Bell, helped lead me to full preterism. Both style and substance are critical to growing full preterism. And Revival Ignite Ministry says, we should always be able to say, I don't know. So anyway, let's move on. Let's hear the next question. What should we do? Because we are at 1 hour and 11 minutes, and that is the first question. I feel, and you guys will allow me, and I will do this in succession, I feel that we should bring this discussion to an end here so that people who will be examining this post-conference watch party, they will not have too much to deal with. And in any case, we've had so much going on here in this particular session. I think that should be enough. Then what I'm going to do immediately, I'm going to go and make a new broadcast, and I'm going to come and pick it up exactly from where we are right now. Is that fair enough for everybody? Those of you who are watching? That way, and it's going to take about 10-15 minutes for me to actually make up everything and to set up everything that is needed for the next question. I think that's where we should end. But Revival Ignite Ministries, who was there in the room, who I'm not sure that Revival Ignite Ministries is even a covenant creationist. We've never discussed it. He's my friend. But I mean, he's my friend for a couple months. We just met a couple months ago. He says, no, it was clearly explained. Now, according to Mike Sullivan, no one understood what Tim Martin was saying. Let me put out the comment. Here is Mike Sullivan's statement here. Steve, no one understood what Tim was saying. And you are correct, you are biased. Of course, I'm not no one. Therefore, you can give us an interpretation of Tim's answer since no one understands what he's saying. I reject that answer, Mike, with all due respect. I believe that you are diminishing people's capacity to think. I think you are treating people like little children. You can say, I did not understand what he was saying, but you cannot speak for anyone else. I'm sure you have, and I would like for you to provide evidence that no one understood what Tim Martin was saying. I would really like to hear that. I would like to hear from Rick Welch, who are your partners in the Revelation study. I would like to hear from Zach Davis, who is also your partner in the Revelation. I want to hear them say, I have no idea what Tim is saying. I will ask Don Preston whether he understood what Tim Martin was saying. I will ask William Bell if he understood what Tim Martin was saying. I will ask Jack Scott. In live video, I will ask all of them. And if the majority come back and saying, we understand what he's saying, we may not agree with him, but we understand what he's saying, then Mike, I think that you will need to come back and say, I think I overstepped my bounds here in trying to speak for the whole community of Christians. So with all due respect, please, I am pleading with you, brother. I love you. I respect you. I was so glad to meet you last year, and I'm looking forward again to meet you this year at the Arkansas conference. I am, really. I want to just give you that big old hug because especially you're much bigger and taller than me. I really do. I just appreciate you so much. But I think this part of your interactions, I think that you need to work on that. And I'm saying this as a younger brother. I'm saying as a younger minister, I think you need to work on that. And I have to say it publicly because you are doing it publicly, even now. Because I have seen so many people come into the discussions and say, Mike, tone it down, man. Let's keep it straight. But it doesn't seem like it's getting through. So it has to be done publicly. It has to be said, brother, you're not doing this the right way. And I know I've said it a number of times. You say, no one understands Tim Martin and so on and so forth. I think your first comment here was that question destroyed covenant creationism. I don't know any covenant creationist that ceased to be covenant creationist the day that Don Preston asked that question. I don't think that Don Preston was asking anything to do with covenant creationism. Don Preston did not ask any question concerning Genesis, which covenant creationism is based on. And then you say Tim Martin's very long answer was bizarre. This is a Q&A, brother. The Q&As are supposed to be free-flowing. That is how we designed them. And every Q&A that we did, even after that, people were given the free range to answer the question. I mean, this was not a... You see, if it's one thing, if Don Preston had sent that question to Tim Martin ahead of time and said, when we get to the conference, I need you to present an exegetical answer with scholarly references. For it's on the fly, brother. Be reasonable. And he gave a pretty good answer, a very biblical answer, in my view. Even in that situation. And for me, I am already used to this. My ministry runs on, like Jack Scott, I just kind of get led by the Spirit where I'm going to go, even here. But people like Tim Martin and even Don Preston, and maybe even yourself, Mike, are very structured. You answer things after considering them and writing a paper on it. But a Q&A should not be subjected to the same standards. It's not reasonable. Amen. So we are going to finish this one there so that when we come back, we can see what's going on. Helen White from Florida was there. She says, I understand what Tim was saying. Rodney Moyes says, new people coming into Christ have second thoughts when they see infighting among preterists. They do. That's one of the things that really disillusioned me at the first. Revival says, not completely. I don't understand it completely, but I'm studying the idea. Okay. This is setting a bad taste in new believers' mouth. I'm not even going to read the last part of that. And of course, Helen says, I understand what Tim is saying. So I think that the message is clear. So we will pick it up in a few minutes. It's about 12:58. So by about 12:10, I will come back with a continuation of this examination of the Q&A. And now we will go to the question that William Bell asked of Tim Martin following his first presentation. If you have not watched the first presentation so that you can know the basis of Don's question, I would highly recommend that you watch the first presentation by Tim Martin. It's called The Faith at the Field at Anathoth. You can find it at beyondcreationscience.com, or you can find it on my YouTube channel, Ask the Pastor Bible 3D. Watch it, then watch the Q&A, and you make up your mind of what is going on there. Amen. Well, blessings, guys. To finish on a very, very positive note, 2 announcements. Number 1, next month at Arkansas, Jonesboro, Arkansas, Zach Davis and Travis Drum. I wanted to say Travis when I say Tim. Travis Drum and Zach Davis are going to be hosting an awesome epic conference following up the one they did 2 years ago. The 14 preterists in a bunker are going to be meeting there. Some of the speakers at this conference in Jonesboro, August 14th to 16th, are people like Mike Sullivan, Robert Cruikshank, some guy called Steve Maguire, Don Preston, David Cardis. Oh, it's going to be loaded. So I'm just mentioning some of them. You can find that information online. You can register on Eventbrite. We really, really hope that we will see many of you there. I'll be there myself. Okay. Now, secondly, breaking news today. We are going to be holding an eschatology conference at the same place in Todd Hall Retreat Center next year, 2027, in August. We are believing it's going to be the first week of August. We have not really finalized the details of the dates and the speakers, but we have finalized the title and the theme. We are going to be looking at the eschatology of the Psalms. What does the book of Psalms, or what do the Psalms teach on eschatology? And it is going to be as epic or even more epic than what we had this year. So I want to suggest, for those of you who came this year and want to come next year, why don't you go on a diet now, shed like 10 to 20 pounds, so that when we get to Todd Hall next year, you know you are going to be gaining at least 10 to 20 pounds. That way, you are not having to go against your doctor's orders. That's my advice to you. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be wonderful. Now, one of the things that we are going to do this coming up year is that we are going to go all out with technology. We are going to be buying all new technology. We want to improve the quality of our streams because the internet there is very good, and we might even hire a sound person, because you guys need to know that me and my children are the ones who are running the media while also running the conference. We may go out and hire a professional, or if there is a preterist out there who is a professional in sound and you want to volunteer for that part, hey, talk to me. We might even work out something with the registration, because we have the right equipment. I believe we just don't know how to run it. I'm just not a sound guy. I'm not a professional with the sound guy. So I mean, during the church services, I am able to do it, and I'm able to provide a pretty good experience. But especially when we go to a new thing, we're not able to do it as well as we could. So we just need somebody who knows how to run a soundboard and how to make sure the sound gates, noise gates are all set right. We look forward to that. So, but anyway, August 2027, the eschatology of the Psalms, Todd Hall Retreat Center. I want you to know this. Todd Hall Retreat Center only has 100 beds total. So again, we will only have 100 tickets for lodging. We can't have any more. Now, the meeting building can hold the meeting building can hold up to 120 people. So 120 people can stay outside, but the beds are 100. So we can have the conference holding 120 people, and for now, that's where we're going to keep it, because we feel it's manageable. Now, I know revival, you need July, but July has been very hard for us, and for my partner, Tim Martin, and even for us. So we want to move it to August, because that's what we've been doing traditionally before. So anyway, see you guys the next time. Give me about 10 minutes. I'll be back with a continuation of this.